Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday Night Live. Today, we've got a very interesting session, which is very topical, the property market. What's going to happen to the property market going forward? Today, we're in political turmoil. Interest rates have shot up in the UK, and they're shot up everywhere. And inflation is running at a higher figure in most places because of the Ukraine war and because of a number of other factors. So we really need to take a look at where we are. I've got three guests on today on my panel: Alan McCullough, who's an architect, Nick Richardson, who is a lawyer or solicitor. We've been talking about what's the difference between a lawyer and a solicitor. I don't know, but it doesn't make any difference. And all the way from San Francisco, Craig Adams, who's a real estate broker or an estate agent, or everyone's got different names, haven't they, these days? Anyway, first of all, I'm going to read out very quickly a report that Ken Mead, a property expert, has sent me this morning because he can't be with us. So this is what Ken tells me. Property asking prices will have to fall by 10% if vendors are wanting to sell by Christmas, as most properties on the market are overpriced. Property prices will also fall by a further 10% in the next 6 months, if people want to sell. Sellers with existing buyers that need a mortgage will have to hold their breath to see if the mortgages come through. Mortgage valuers are being really cautious with their loan to value mortgages. Some mortgage offers are only valid for 3 months, and buyers are panicking now to get exchange of contracts. More fixed mortgages are coming to the end of their term, and people are going to be very surprised with the new interest rates and payments. Cash buyers are still around. They were able to offer quick deals, which might be good when there's fire sales. Chinese and Far Eastern money is still coming into the UK, as they're seeing the UK as a safe haven, despite what's been going on. Viewings on new to the market properties have dried up as buyers are waiting to see what is going to happen. Cashed up buyers will sit pretty to pounce on possible deals for the next 6 months. So that's what's been going on in the UK. They answer some of the questions you've sent in to me this morning, but I'd like to switch over to Craig Adams in San Francisco. And Craig, just an update on what's happening in California or in San Francisco particularly.
Well, thank you, Derek. So I have to agree with Ken Mead's assessment quite a bit. I think our economy is mirroring a lot of what's happening in the UK. But San Francisco itself is a bubble. We have a very unique, we have a peninsula, essentially. It's already built out, and it's surrounded by this beautiful bay, and then there's communities surrounding us. So everyone wants to live here at the high quality of life, and so the property values are there. They just seem to be protected. So when we have a real problem, our market tends to, be the last to be affected by it and then the first to recover. So although you pay a pretty penny to live in the Bay Area, the return over time has been consistent and good. But I think that what we're seeing is a really unique phenomenon right now, because in our business it appears that there's a growing inventory, but it's a bit of a sleight of hand. And in fact, the inventory that's on the market has been dropping. So we're down about a little over 16% from where we were last year, which just means, we have less listings that are coming up. So people are hunkering down a little bit more, but then the sales volume is also basically being affected by that. So our sales volume is a little bit lower. And so it appears that the inventory is growing, but just the opposite's happening. And I think what we're saying is that's a result of the interest rates going up. That's one of the issues that we have to deal with. And people are they're kind of holding back a little bit. And so we've just been working on trying to encourage people to, if you're looking at buying, now's a really good time to buy. If you are worried about the interest rates, get an adjustable rate interest. It's a little bit lower. And when the interest rates readjust, you can always refinance your property. So those are some of the factors that we're dealing with. But overall, it's been very healthy market in the Bay Area.
And what are interest rates? What is a 2-year or 5-year fixed ballpark? I mean, here it's about 5 to 6% now. It's jumped up because of our issues.
Yeah, right. Our standard interest is a 30-year fixed interest rate. So that's how we do it here. And then that's amortized annually well, over 30 years. So the interest rate that we have today is right around 6.5%, maybe a
Wow.
little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, but that's about right where we're at the moment.
Wow. And I remember Patricia Fripp telling me that house prices in San Francisco were really expensive compared with the rest of California. But she also mentioned something unique, which was property tax. Did she say something to me about property taxes is the same from when you buy it to when you sell it? But if you buy a new property, you might be paying a lot more tax than, or did I misunderstand that under the glass of wine I was drinking with her at the time?
Yeah, actually, no, we have what's called, a Proposition 13 was passed. And so that limits the increase in property taxes. So the property is assessed when you buy the property. And if you bought a property today, the assessed value would probably be associated with the sale price. And then over time, you have that property tax that is really fixed. It has a small amount of increase every year, but it's low. So if you hold on to that property for 10 years and it doubles in value, then the next guy buying the property is essentially paying twice as much in taxes, which can be kind of sizable, depending on the size of the property. Our average property in San Francisco today is about $2 million for the average home in the city. And
what do you get for that? What do you get for that, Craig? Two bedrooms, or do you get a mansion?
Really, that'd be about a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with one car parking and probably a small yard. Okay. So that's what you would get.
Thanks, Craig. I'll come back to you if I may in a minute, but now I want to go to the next road from where I live to Alan McCullough, my architect friend, member of our mastermind group. Let me tell you a little bit about Alan. He worked for a large architectural background company in urban design, Newtown development, worked in Hong Kong, which must be interesting when Alan was there, but even more interesting now and a bit scary. Alan, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Tell us your story and tell us what's going on in the extension market and the market that you are involved in. You're on mute, Alan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Basically, we've come out of this sort of post-COVID lockdown where people were basically, trying to get more space because they had more time at home, garden rooms, home office, and so forth. Wanted to live in the countryside. I think that's calmed down a little bit, and it's a more even arrangement. But so I've been dealing with these people who sort of local residents who've sat on their home, spending more time in their home, and they want to do something to it. So it's always interesting when somebody's been there for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years. You go along and you try not to be too judgmental, but as an architect, you're trying to meet their aspirations. First of all, they need to usually have to make them agree on their aspirations, because it's not often that couples agree on everything, or certainly not priorities. So, and then there's that. So it's like doing a SWOT analysis. Basically, you say, and if there are things you can critical about, you've got to introduce these things a little bit subtly. If it's really dark in the middle, you think, well, do you like find out whether you're actually a mole, or do you like daylight? And there are sort of, some people might say, well, down the road they're in, they might say everybody's putting on an extension, so they're making it 5 bedrooms, and that's great if they've got the space and they've got car parking. But normally the architecture or the plan of a 3-bedroom house doesn't easily upscale to a well-proportioned 5-bedroom house, because usually everything needs to go up in proportion. The sort of halls, staircase. You don't want to go up a small staircase and go up to 5 bedrooms upstairs. So that sounds very prosaic, but these are the things which really you need to get over without trying to rock the boat. You're trying to say, well, the thing is, moving a stair isn't that expensive, but everybody thinks, well, Alan might contradict me here, but generally speaking, the actual stair is only about £1,000. You've got to find the landing and reorganize thing and get some light from the top. But in essence, there are some quick gains if they're willing to be open. So it's that's how I start. I don't know whether you want me to go on.
Well, Alan, one of the things that surprises me is that you can walk into a property, and I know you walked into our daughter's property, and you can immediately visualize what can be done to it. I just can't do that. That's just not on my radar. How did you learn to do that?
Well, I mean, for a long time, I worked for large companies who work for volume builders or volume apartment developers, and they have a pattern book. They have everything in its place, in the right scale, in the right order. So I'm slightly indoctrinated. If I'm in a largish house of any description, I'll try to find a utility room. I'll try to find a decent hall. I'll try and not get things too idiosyncratic, because I sort of so it's like reverting to standard arrangements, because if you don't and you want to finish and resell, and it's a lovely house, a lovely location, you get a lot of resistance from people saying, oh, I'd love that house, but I can't buy it because of this one thing. And I try and make sure that I deliver, even if they don't want to do that thing, whatever that might be. I tactfully try and say, well, it could be, if you wanted to resell straight away, you should do this. And so it's a bit softly, because you're really intruding on somebody's house when you're looking through their house. It's quite access all areas, which is pretty unusual.
And how do you tell who's the decision maker, who's pulling all the strings when you walk in with a husband and wife, or a wife and wife, as we do these days?
Well, I think most people, will be able to get that. People do who does the talking, who backs away, who doesn't really engage too much in terms of what they want, because they're already trying to reduce the budget. So it's usually, to get me around, it's a pent-up demand, and from one of the partners, and to be honest, I have to go with the person who's the keenest. So I mean, okay, they both need to agree, I guess, but it's pretty obvious right from the start.
Yeah. And okay, that's great, Alan. We'll come back to you. Any questions, short, sharp questions in the chat box for any of our panelists? I want to go to Nick Richardson now. You'll have to unmute, Nick. I can't say that properly, can I? I'm so excited to be talking to you. What's going on in the conveyancing market, the legal market, the ex-COVID market in your firm, Nick?
It's interesting, Derek. Alan and Derek know me well enough to know that I hate the word conveyancing. It harks to an old process in the English legal system that doesn't exist anymore. But it's still a term that's used. Most people understand it. So I'll do the decent thing and use it again. Conveyancing, certainly in this country and Guildford Southeast in particular, there's still a lot of interest. There's still a fairly dynamic property market, but it's certainly in my view, my experience, it's poised right on a cliff edge at the moment. All the smart money indicates that, a bit like the I've got an idea, Michael Caine in the original Italian Job, before the bus plummets over the cliff edge and you never actually get to see that. That's pretty much exactly where we are. I'm caught up in this myself, because as Derek and Alan know, I'm trying to move house, and I'm hoping to exchange this coming Friday. And as Ken in his little email summary has put, those in that position, it's quite nerve shredding at the moment, waiting for a call from the agent involved saying, oh, your buyer's lost his mortgage offer, what are we going to do here? So fingers crossed that can go well. But the prices have held up, but everyone is terrified that they're going to, if you'll forgive the rather crude expression, they're going to tank. And a number of people might be thinking of tactically trying to sell at the top of the market, bank the money, go into rented accommodation, and then wait for the market to plummet, and then pick up a relative bargain. And they'll be in a very, very strong position to do that as a cash buyer. So it's very, very difficult to know what's going to happen. Today's announcement that we have got a new prime minister for sure is very comforting. I make no comment on the individual involved, but hopefully there will be some stability arising from that. It's a bit like in a Zoom presentation where you're doing a PowerPoint, someone calls for next slide, please. It's very tempting to say next chancellor or next PM, please. And that's pretty much where we are. It's a bit of a comedic value worldwide. So hopefully the UK will have some credibility restored. It badly needs it, certainly.
And Nick, you're doing a very interesting thing personally, aren't you? I know that you're, because you've got your business in Guildford, you've been running it from home on COVID, and you're moving to Cornwall. What's that all about?
Well, it's just making practical or taking practical advantage of all the electronics that COVID has brought to us. So I'll be doing more remote working, but I'll be doing an interesting commute from Cornwall up to Guildford twice a week. There's a very interesting plane journey. It goes from Newquay Airport up to Gatwick. Takes about an hour. So you can drive 4.5 hours each way, or you can take the plane. Takes about an hour, and then get the train in from Gatwick to Guildford. So it's all about taking advantage of what opportunities exist and trying to get a slightly more relaxed lifestyle.
It's very interesting for our American friends. Cornwall is a fabulous place, very remote, fantastic beaches, but quite a long way away. Wish you well with that, Nick, and we'll come back to you shortly. Craig, I want to come back to you for a minute. How do you tell, and I know you're really good at selling and negotiating and emotional intelligence, how do you tell who's the key decision maker when you're showing or deciding on a property?
Oh, I love that question. You become a student of just observation, really, because a lot of times the one that's the silent one is the decision maker, and you don't really know that. So you have to be, sometimes you have to really be attuned to what's happening with the partnership and follow the body language. And I ask a lot of questions, and then I just let them talk. So that's my secret. And a lot of times it's just getting into the conversation in just the slightest way. You find out a little bit of something they're interested in, and then it's like opening the floodgates. For example, I mean, Derek, you like Arsenal. Well, it's like that opens up a whole different conversation, doesn't it? So when you pick up on things like that, it's really just it's a wonderful opportunity to get to know who's the decision maker. And not only that, but I've been through the business a long time. I think what differentiates me as a salesperson as opposed to others is I'm not trying to sell the house. Of course, that sounds a little funny saying that. Really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find the need for that other individual. And if this house is the right house for them, I want to point out the amenities and the features that are going to best suit their needs. And if not, then I'll help them find something that's better suited for them. So that's my attitude, and that's been very successful for me.
Yeah, that's I mean, the soft sell or whatever different languages we use, it's needs selling, isn't it? Yeah. There's a question from Paul Coleman that I'd like to ask you at the moment. You mentioned the average price in San Francisco is $2 million. In the south of England, to buy cheaper houses, it just depends on the length of the commute. So you move out further, and people commute from Bournemouth, which Patricia knows very well, who's joined us. What's the commute like in San Francisco if you're balancing traveling time against affordable housing?
Well, that's a great question. And it still is. The term was you drive until you can buy in the Bay Area. because from the city center, that's where you're going to have the highest price per square foot. And then the further out you go. And I actually live in Marin, which is on the north side. So I get to cross over the Golden Gate Bridge to go home every day. And it's wonderful. It's a bucolic. In fact, if you drive north and you find the first field with cows, I live next to that field. So it's only a half an hour to San Francisco by car. So I'm really just happy about that. And what we're seeing, especially with the whole world of Zoom, is that people can work, remotely and, maybe come into the office a couple of times a week, but that gives them options to drive further and enjoy a nicer lifestyle. So we see a lot of that.
Yeah, and of course you don't catch a train or anything like that. No one would dream of driving into London, Craig. That finished about 20 years ago. In fact, it cost you £12 to drive into London with a diesel car, or might be 25 now. It's been going up like mad. What about, you must have some commuter trains, mustn't you, like the other cities in the world?
Well, we have different transportation systems. Certainly, we have a BART line, which is the Bay Area transportation, and it's a rail line, and we also have ferries. So where I'm at in the North Bay, if we want, we could take the ferry boats into downtown San Francisco, which is a great commute. So we do have options. It costs about right around $9 now to drive across the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay. So that, so it is expensive if you drive, but for me, it works a little bit better because of the type of work I'm involved with.
Sure. And what about, final question to you is, what about extensions, people extending their houses? Is it difficult to get planning permission and all the regulatory issues? And do you have to pay tax? You have to pay tax here on extensions as well, VAT at 20%. I believe it's still 20%.
I found this.
There is a push for that. What we have are called accessory dwelling units, which are also known as ADUs, is the acronym. And those are small, tiny houses. If you have the square footage, the city allows you to add those units, either inside the structure itself or outside. So if you want to, add a small little house to the back of your lot, you can do that. This is a double-edged sword, though, what we're seeing in San Francisco. On the paper, it sounds great. Okay, I'm going to add another unit, and I'm going to Airbnb it, or I'm going to rent that unit out to a tenant. Well, the problem that we see is that the city of San Francisco in particular is taking that single family home now and converting it into a 2-unit building. And so for tax purposes, it crosses a threshold where when you're a single family homeowner, you have certain tax benefits and opportunities, but you lose those when you go to units. And so it's kind of a slippery slope. So although on paper it sounds good, there's some considerations that you have to have your eyes wide open when you go in that direction. But I like the idea. I think, I'm a big proponent of building up as opposed to building out, because for example, behind me is this is a field next to my university in Colorado. There's no houses there. And sometimes I think the best purpose for that piece of land is to leave it natural. And, the best way to do that is to utilize the lot that you have. So I'm a big proponent of building up.
And last question, what would the typical size be of one of these ADUs? I'm sure there's one or two architects on here itching to know.
Well, I think in the ADU units, it's not uncommon to see 400 to 600 square feet.
Okay, thank you. I have no idea. Being a layman, I have no idea how big or small that is, but people on this will understand exactly, so that's fine.
Well, 400 square feet would be the equivalent of, say, a 2-car garage. If you had 2 cars in a space side by side, that's about 400 square feet. So if you take that and maybe double it, between that and, that it gives you a sense of the square footage we're referring to.
Okay, thanks, Craig. That's great. Will you stay on for other questions? I want to switch back to Alan now. And Alan, extensions, extras, building costs in the UK. How's that with you? How are you seeing that?
Well, it's very, very difficult now because obviously prices of materials have gone up, and builders have, have been good builders are sort of difficult to find, and so people are struggling. In fact, they're not wanting to go forward with any development on their property because they're sort of scared of what the prices are going to end up like. It's going to, it could be 40-60% more.
Really? Wow.
I mean, I started a refurbishment of my house, not a particularly good time, about 2 months ago, and it's a bit of a, giving the builder your checkbook and say, go on, carry on, just carry on. But so that's difficult. But the other aspect in this country certainly is the impact of energy and retrofitting. Retrofitting is where we have, in UK, we probably have 9 million houses which are in very poor condition and are not operating in terms of, they're never going to be efficient from an energy perspective unless a lot of money is put into them, a lot of care and attention. And they're often in areas or tenures which won't sustain people, they're rented or whatever, they're not going to do it. So in many ways, the government has to step in, or funded by maybe some of these windfall taxes from the energy companies. It can't be direct from them because that shouldn't be a direct line. But seems to me if we're going to use windfall, the energy companies' windfall taxes, that we really need to get serious about improving the housing stock of UK PLC, and that's right across the board.
That's a massive job though, Alan, and our house, it's been insulated 30 years ago, but hasn't had anything else done to it. Am I going to be in trouble when I sell it because I haven't spent money on it?
Well, your house has got cavity walls. It's big enough where you can actually, you can do the, it's basically the floor walls and ceiling or roof. You up the insulation there, you get decent ventilation, and then you can start to use economic energy to get your heating. So not that difficult, and at your price is going to, the price of the property you have is going to be worth doing. But there's lots of these which are either too small or on the edge of being viable in any sense. So I know I sound a bit of a doom monger here, but it is quite depressing going forward. We talked about not having any more gas boilers and not having fracking and not, but energy, we just need to find a way, don't we? In a clean, green way.
Yeah.
But we do, and I'd be very wealthy if I could solve that myself. Sure.
I've got a few other questions to ask as well, but what about planning permission? Something I didn't ask Craig is planning permission getting easier, better? Are we going to get more? Is our new Prime Minister going to allow more building on green belt, green fields? What do you think is going to happen?
Not me.
Yeah.
Well, Craig.
No, you first.
Well, certainly, there's a lot of development going on in areas which shouldn't be developed because the local plan, which is the local plan for the area, hasn't been adopted. So developers come in and then they have the right to put new housing in inappropriate locations. So the democratic process of creating a local plan and it's just not working, unfortunately, and which is why it's not all joined up thinking, in terms of parking and facilities and doctors' practice and schools. It's a mess, and I'd love to say it wasn't, but it is.
Well, I'm sure you make a lot of money advising people on how to do it, Alan. It's your turn for the drinks next week, by the way.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay, Craig, and then I'd like to come to Alan Dunsmore, if you don't mind, Alan. Craig, what about planning permissions in the Bay Area? Is that easy, difficult?
I think that they have it down to where it's fairly easy. I think a lot of information's online, and you can research and do a lot of work online. And then when you do have to deal with the planning process, it takes longer. Everything's just taking longer right now. Where the planning process used to take maybe 3 to 6 months to get the proper permits, it's probably another 3 months or so. So you're probably looking at 9 months to get the proper permits. And sometimes it takes a little longer depending on the complexity of the project. And we also have expediters. So if you do want to have somebody that you can hire that has had experience with the planning department, sometimes they're very useful to use.
Okay, thanks. And Alan Dunsmore, I was thinking about these prices that are going up that was mentioned by Alan McCullough. Alan, you need to unmute yourself. What are you experiencing? You must be working on things where the price has gone through the roof.
Yeah, all our projects are affected by that. So we're working across all sectors. We're in housing, education, healthcare, West End theatre refurbishment, and every project at the moment has been affected, and contractors especially are finding it very difficult to give fixed prices beyond even 2 weeks later. The price of materials will have gone up.
Wow.
So it's very difficult for them to sort of negotiate and pin down prices on projects at the moment. Steelwork especially has gone through the roof. Even timber on a lot of projects is all the costs are going up. It may, I don't know, I was at a talk the other day, so things may sort of bottom out or stabilise in the next year. As interest rates will reach a peak, hopefully tail end of 2023 into 24, they may start to stabilise, but that's a whole other sort of economic talk and prediction there.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a major issue in the industry, and we're finding that more and more projects in the last year have gone on hold. So the clients may take the projects up to planning and then sit on them and wait for the economic circumstances to stabilise. That's clients who can afford to do that and don't need the sort of immediate sales. So major house builders or major commercial clients. So yeah, it's having a bigger impact.
Is there an escalation clause built into sort of fixed price contracts, on inflation or materials index or something like that?
Yeah, there'll be all sorts of clauses going in there, and all sorts of sort of agreements and deals being done on the projects that are going ahead. Do you know what I mean? So unless the contractors are confident enough, then yeah, there's all sorts of things happening at the moment. The biggest problem at the moment actually isn't the increase in materials prices. It's the instability in the country and how the country's been run at the moment is causing the most issue at the moment.
Gee whiz, it come down to that. Okay, thanks Alan. Answer, yes or no answer. Do you think Rishi will cancel High Speed 2? Yes or no?
No.
Maybe. No. Okay, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's almost half built now. And yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Alan. I'm just going to go round the panelists to see if they've got anything else to add before I wrap up, and then we'll deal with the questions in the chat box after that. Nick, I've left you out a bit there. You're sitting there in all your greenery. Final thoughts from you?
Ultimately, final thoughts. It's great to have a new PM. Definitely, that's good to get that out of the way relatively quickly. As I said earlier, I think we need stability. Who knows long term where interest rates are going? I've seen one comment in the chat box about property prices possibly going up on a limited basis over the next 12 months or so. Ultimately, it comes down to nobody knows. It's just best guess. And just stay sensible and don't overreact, but don't underreact either.
That's an interesting one. I don't think property prices will go up because I think it's the affordability tests on the mortgage providers that will be the biggest issue, but we're all going to have different opinions on that. Final thought from you, Craig?
Wow, I have so many thoughts along these lines. I appreciated Nick's comments and Alan's regarding the stability. I think it's our governments need to really step it up and do what's right. And we've certainly had our challenges here, but as it reflects on the economy and how it reflects on our real estate market, you have the inflation issue. Of course, we've got the cost of materials, and there's a lot of different factors that we have to deal with that are, it's hard, but I think the positive thing is real estate is probably the best hedge against inflation. So if you have real estate and you're enjoying it now, you have a roof over your head. I mean, that's really, it's a great sense of security and stability in itself. And as far as the future goes, I can just tell you, my family, we've been putting some of our resources aside. We are going back into the investment mode. So we are actually really bullish on buying. And we're not the type of buyers that are looking to get the cheapest price. We just want a fair deal. And we think this is the market that we're going into where investors can flourish. Sure, we'll pay more at interest rates, but there's that over time will take care of itself. So we're very optimistic here.
Okay. Thanks, Craig. I mean, I think in the UK, and it is a question in the chat box, whether you buy investment property, the previous government was passing all sorts of laws to make it more and more difficult with investment properties and taxation. So the answer to that question is you need to look very carefully at that before you buy something.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Craig, and I hope you'll stay on afterwards to enjoy some banter. And Alan, final thoughts from you?
Well, it's been really good to hear Craig. It's quite, I've been to San Francisco once, and it's a great city. There's no doubt about that, and unique. So back to your question. I mean, my view is the big developers in the UK are just, have some terrible ethics. The way they've gone about, for example, the cladding scandal. How can that possibly carry on for as long as it has done? And all aspects of development by these so-called top developers, but they really are playing fast and loose with all sorts of regulations and putting pressure on local authorities to pass things which they shouldn't, and just because they're not controlled properly. So, and I don't want a communist state, but I do want people to do the right thing.
Thanks, Alan. And big thanks to all three of my guest experts and to Ken Mead providing his input, to Craig Adams in San Francisco, to Nick Richardson in Guildford, and to Alan McCullough also in Guildford. And please join me again if you're watching this on YouTube or the Negotiators podcast. Please pass it on to your friends. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.